Right, in this video, we're going to examine 5 Mandela effects that all seem to strangely relate to each other in a very similar fashion. And what kind of hidden message might it be trying to tell us? So first, we're going to look at Pikachu. And this is a very familiar Mandela effect where Pikachu seems to have changed his tail color. People like myself remember a black tip. So here's some evidence on this Crack magazine where they have a Pikachu card, a parody of him with a black tip. And there are many examples of this. Some of these, I think they're knockoff versions of Pikachu toys where they seem to have a black tip. This is also very difficult to find. This kind of residue of a black tip, which is what I remember people making crochet Pikachus with a black tip. This is interesting, a set of headphones, and you think these might be the ears of Pikachu, but with that zigzag shape and the jagged edge on the black tip, you know it's a tail just by looking at that, because his ears are straight, not zigzagged. Maggie Simpson's wearing a black tipped Pikachu outfit. Some of this artwork, many people's fan art, seems to depict a black tip on his tail. I even heard a discussion in a Facebook group where an older gentleman was talking about his daughter drawing a black tip on a Pikachu figure that she was drawing, and he had asked her, why are you drawing a black tip on that Pikachu? And she says, well, because that's what he has. Apparently to her, he had a black tip on his tail even up to a recent period of time when her father had no memory at all of a black tip on his tail. So this kind of highlights the individual and relative nature of the Mandela effect, where some people can be affected by it and another person might not see it, and they'll each be, I don't know, seeing their own versions of reality. One sees a black tip and the other person doesn't. So here's going through all this residue of Pikachu with a black tip on his tail. And this also relates to a personal story of mine. Before I knew anything about the Mandela effect, I was in a hotel, flipping through channels, and I saw a Pokemon, which I hardly ever watched Pokemon, but I know Pikachu. I played the Nintendo game Smash Brothers, and he's one of the characters in there. I know he had a black tip. And I saw this episode, and I was like, wait, there's no black tip on his tail. What's going on? Some animator must have forgot to animate a black tip on his tail. I thought it was a new, remake or something. Maybe they redesigned the character, but I saw that the animation was old, and I was just baffled by that. Totally baffled. And then I found out about the Mandela effect. So this is an episode of Robot Roach from 2003 or something, where this character dresses up like Pikachu, and he's got the black tip. That's exactly what I remember Pikachu's tail looking like. So now let's continue on to Piglet. What do you remember about Piglet? I always thought he had a curly pig tail. Apparently, he never has. This gets really strange, because this is really hard to find any kind of evidence that Piglet had a curly tail. You can find some Halloween costumes here and there. Here's a really old version, I think, of Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, where he seems to be wearing this outfit with the stripes, and you can see his curly tail there, but all the newer ones, he does not have a tail, and he doesn't really have an outfit, which is what I thought he wore. The banded part of his body is actually part of his body. It's not really an outfit, from what I understand. But here it's depicted as an outfit with sleeves and a collar. There's a tattoo or something. I'm not sure if that's a tail or a motion line, but kind of looks like a tail, but it's straight. People crochet Piglet, and he has a curly tail when he's actually never had one. But this is huge. Piglet's big movie. And they put a curly tail on Piglet when he's never had one. So his big movie that he's in features Piglet with no tail on that character in the movie, but yet his promotional poster has a big old curly tail. Somebody dropped the ball in designing this promotional poster for sure. Now we'll move on to Curious George. This one doesn't affect me as much. I can't say for sure that I remember Curious George having a tail, but many people do. They swear that Curious George, in the books that they read when they were kids growing up, he had a tail. And the reality we live in now, he does not have a tail. Which, for me, I think that's the reality I've always remembered. I thought he was, more like a small chimpanzee than anything that had a tail, any kind of monkey that had a tail. So you can find, costumes, Curious George monkey mascot costume, and he's got a tail. Nope, this is incorrect. He doesn't have a tail. Tattoos, someone has him on a monkey with a tail. Nope, a t-shirt featuring him with a tail. Nope, doesn't have a tail. School educational material, featuring Curious George. They put a tail on him. Somebody seems to remember Curious George having a tail. How about you? What do you recall? Here's a number of these Halloween costumes where people are dressing up as Curious George with a tail. It's harder to find plushies. I found a lot of other plushies that highlight the Mandela affected reality that I remember, but Curious George is really difficult to find one with a tail. And this is really funny. Pin the tail on George. Pin the tail that he's never had. And a number of people are playing this party game, Pin the Tail on George. And that's what a lot of people remember. Curious George having a tail. This is kind of interesting. It's a flashlight. And you can see the switch here on the right, and the light comes out of his eyes. And this looks like a tail that's part of the handle. Other people will say, oh, it's just part of the handle. It's just molded that way. But I would say this is residual evidence that this is supposed to be a tail on George. And if you look at the original creators of Curious George, some of their earlier material, they do actually draw him. Well, it's not Curious George, it's before they came up with that character, but they drew a monkey with a tail in some of this earlier material that they created. But that's what George looks like. So are you seeing a pattern here so far with what I'm showing you? Now, I did a video earlier about Snoopy, but Snoopy is another one affected by the Mandela effect. His tail, I remember the thin black tail, but it's actually white, and not only just white, it has a black base. So there's a lot of evidence suggesting that many people remember him having a thin black tail. This looks like a screen grab from the Peanuts Christmas special. And here he's depicted with a thin black tail. That's what I remember. But I think this might be photoshopped because you cannot find this episode where he has a thin black tail. He's got a fluffy white tail. But there's plenty of these plush dolls where he's got a black tail, black tail, black tail. This is how he's looked over the years. Thicker white tail, black tail, white tail on this plush, white tail, black tail, white, black tail. And yeah, a lot of evidence that you can get a Snoopy plush with either black or white tail, but only one is correct. Next, we have the bald eagle. What do you remember a bald eagle's tail looking like? There's a lot of evidence here that many people seem to remember the bald eagle having a brown tail. And I want to say that this is correct for me. I'm not sure when this might have changed. I think it might actually be quite a while ago. But what do you recall a bald eagle's tail to look like? And this is interesting because this keeps showing up for me. I was doing research on Donald Duck, and they showed a bald eagle here. Donald Duck passes by in his car, and he's got a brown tail. Do you know what it's supposed to look like? Well, here it is. I've even seen to remember this old World War II poster, or World War I, where the bald eagle did have a brown tail. Now it's white. Big fanned white tail. So a lot of sports teams are depicting a bald eagle with a brown tail. That's not right. Why are so many people getting it wrong here? Even the Philadelphia Eagles seems to recall, at least, not a white tail for sure. Look at this. And it gets really interesting as some of this residue is, gone over. Even some of these official seals, government seals, show a bald eagle with a brown tail. And the channel, Hazel Fiverr, did a really good video on this also. But I'm just using this to tie into the subject, this hidden meaning that might be put out there for us to try and interpret. As you can see, even with a lot of these plushies, this gets interesting because I just saw this flipping channels the other day. Here we go. U.S. Mail, the official logo and emblem for U.S. Mail is a bald eagle, clearly depicting not a white tail. And another thing I would say is that if the tail was white, as a child, I know I would have looked at an eagle and said, hey, he's bald at both ends. They're not really bald, but the only distinguishing feature about the eagle is its white head. So if that distinguishing feature was also on the tail, I know I would have said, hey, he's got a bald tail too. And nobody, no kids ever pointed that out, as far as I remember. So I was flipping channels and I saw Jimmy Kimmel, and they were asking people on the street, how do birds make babies? And it was pretty comical what people's responses were, because a lot of people just seemed comically clueless about how birds reproduce. But okay, so they gave him some plushies, and this guy's saying how they do this dance in the air. So these eagles have white tails. And they give this lady a couple of eagles, brown tails. Of course, I'm the one who picks that out right away. And I think if you're going to ask people on the street an interesting question, ask them what color do they believe a bald eagle's tail is. I'm sure you get a lot of interesting responses. So there it is. Is that what you remember for a bald eagle? Now, where are we going with all this? I like to think with the Mandela effect, oftentimes there's hidden meaning in some of the symbolism, some of the wording, even the double meaning of words. So in this case, tail, T-A-I-L, changing the tail on so many of these subjects here, and characters, animals. These are just 5 that I can think of off the top of my head. There might be more, and maybe somebody else can point that out in the comments. Also, changing the tail, T-A-L-E. I kind of think that's what's, being pointed out to us here. Humanity is at a crossroads. The tail for humanity is also changing. So what do you think? What is the new tale that is being told? What is the great crossroads that we're all in at this time. Yeah, let me know what you think about all this.